Start.
Okay, good afternoon students.
Good afternoon, sir.
So today we'll be starting with Annie Gregory by W.B. Yeats. So can anyone tell me about Yeats, anything that you know, what kind of genre of poet he was, what kind of poetry he was, he used to focus mainly on, or who is W.B. Yeats? Can you tell me the full name of the poet? William Butler Yeats. Okay. Now for Annie Gregory. So if you generally recall or see the name of the poem, it's kind of a name that reflects of a girl child, right? And for Annie Gregory means as if the poet is trying to say on behalf of Annie something, or kind of a conversation that is going on. Conversation that is going on between Annie and the poet. Okay. So this is the conversation that is going on between a poet and Annie. Now W.B. is basically he was born in Ireland. He was Irish, but he had been coming into the genre of American poetry. Okay, but he was more of an Irish than American. So he used to mainly focus on families, like ordinary lifestyle, simple basic things he used to portray, not something that was extravagant or something that is very putting of the crude or harsh realities of life, but basically what normal scenario of life as we all are used to, the basic life, used to put forward that life. Now, if we generally go on reading the poem, one of you just help me read out. See, this is the, if we read the intro of the poem, it says the poem is a conversation between a young man and a young woman. What they are arguing about. So maybe they are having a conversation. Argument is also kind of a conversation that might not be limited to certain things. Now, if you read, okay, do one thing. Yes, Jyotika, you read the first stanza. No need to stand up because they come and read. Loud and clear.
Never shall a young man throw into
Young man.
is thrown into despair.
Despair.
By those great honey-colored ramparts at your ear. Love you for yourself alone and not your yellow head.
Okay. Now, as you see, the first part of the poem which talks about never shall a young man thrown into despair by those great honey-colored ramparts at your ear love you for yourself alone and not your yellow hair. Now, here the first line, never shall a young man thrown into despair. Now, we all, if I just slide from teaching, if you generally see in practical life that we all fall for things which looks beautiful rather than seeing or getting inside it, what is lying within it, we are mostly get acclimatized, or mostly we get connected to things that are beautiful. Like we have a very famous saying that all that glitters is not gold. So if I recall this line, all that glitters is not gold. So same thing, never shall a young man thrown into despair. At least the poet is saying that if suppose I am having a conversation with Aditya, okay, if I am saying something, he will be replying back. Now this first stanza is said by the poet. Now, never shall a young man in the know, boy who is young, man who is young. Thrown into despair means when here very sad, unhappy. When do we get sad or unhappy? Whenever you say, when any general things, when do we get sad? Or when do we feel lonely or heartbroken?
When we lose something.
Huh?
When we lose something.
When we lose something, okay? The losing can be of feelings, that can be of any material being, like we had learned in a poem, the boy poem, a few days back, that the boy lost his precious ball. Along with the ball, maybe the ball was a material, but he had his emotions attached to it. So it can be the losing of a material that might make you sad, or it can be, if I am being very practical, you can be sad when you are heartbroken. So here the poet is basically talking about the heartbreaking moments when a young man might have proposed a girl or might have fallen for someone where he has been kind of not approved by the woman that he adored. So never shall a young man thrown into despair by those great honey-colored ramparts at your head. Now ramparts are generally, you have seen castles or anything that has big kind of what do I say, walls that are kind of a barrier or kind of a defense for the castle. So ramparts are also here. The honey-colored ramparts is the honey-colored ramparts refers to Annie's. So as if it is kind of a barricade over her ears. So the poet is saying, love you for yourself alone and not your yellow hair. So that means it is a conversation we can conclude from, get an idea from it that might be the young men are getting attracted to her because of her honey-colored hair rather than her feelings or how she is. That's why the poet is saying, love you for yourself alone and not your yellow hair. Now, Annie is telling this is the implications, or this is what the poet is saying. Now Annie in defense is saying, but I can get a hair dye and set such color there, brown or black or carrot. That young man in despair may love me for myself alone and not my yellow hair. Now what Annie is thinking that why to do all these things? Rather I can get my hair with a different color dye, so that way now they are getting attracted towards my honey colored hair. Now if I color my hair in green, that might look very absurd, but the people or the boy who is getting attracted to me might not like my hair, but that time the boy who is falling in love with me might love me or like me as I am and not because of my hair, because her hair color will change. I heard an old religious man. Now again, the third stanza, that was the second stanza that Annie has given in defense of the implications that the poet is inflicting upon her. Now, he's saying, I heard an old religious man, but first night declared that he had found the text to prove that only God, my dear, could love you for yourself alone and not your yellow hair. Now, the last part of the poem is very interesting and kind of a, what do I say, proof of the eternal love that we all believe in. Okay. Now, in the practical world, it do happen that you all must be aware, you all are quite grown up, so not only love between man or woman, but we feel attracted or we get attracted to any material thing that possess some value to it, right? Do we generally value things which does not have that much worth? We feel that any clothes that we are wearing if it is costing around 5,000, it's very good. If it is costing 500, we feel that it might not be good. But we don't look into the quality. We judge according to the, like we all don't judge a book by its cover. Same thing. Now he is saying, the poet is saying that I heard an old religious man what night declared. Night means yesterday, the night previous, that he had found the text to prove that only God. Now here, God, my dear, could love you for yourself alone and not your fellow. Now the poet feels that we all refer God to eternal power or omnipresent, whatever you say, that He is the Savior, He is the constructor of man, whatever we say, but only love, if we want, that is pure. It's from God. Okay. Now that means, kind of the poet is saying that you will not expect love from anyone apart from God, which is pure and eternal, which is solely because of your heart, that is related to emotions and not material wealth. So that love can only be doing forget about text. In general circumstances also, do we count how much our parents love us? We generally cannot. Can you tell that it might be that few things your father might be supporting you, and few things your mother might be supporting you, but neither you can count them. Like, can you balance? Can you weigh them? That my mother loves me this kg, my father loves me this amount of more. We cannot do that because that is pure love that they have for us. So, like that, because there is emotions attached to the love they are bestowing upon us. Apart from that, like we respect our parents, we have a faith in God. Now only God has that pure love for human beings and no one else. So basically, he is telling that we can only expect the pure love from God and no one else. So here, it's a kind of a defense where it is trying to tell to the readers that in this materialistic world where we are all surrounded by possessions and material wealth, only the love of God is pure and eternal. So as Annie might be, it could be a probability that Annie might have been not very successful in a love relationship. That's why she might have got few things, like she might have been ditched by someone, or might not be the relation is in a successful state, and she feels that the man who was in her life might have loved her because of her hair and not of her heart. This could be a probability. Now this, if you all know, just let me see. This is the poet whom we are talking about. He was born in Sandton, Dublin, Ireland. Though he was born in Ireland, he belonged to the poetry genre, romantic setting and themes. Now, as I have discussed, like love, relationship, everything that is romantic. Romanticism not only counts on love relationship between a boy and a girl, it can be romantic. Romantic, anything that is blissful, that is happy, that gives you a smile on your face, can be romantic. Okay, so this is William Bhattacharya, and if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Then we'll be moving on to some factual things that we can know about the poets. If you have any doubts, you can ask me in between. Let me see.
Butler Yeats was one of the greatest poets of the 20th century. At the age of 19, he joined the Metropolitan School of Art in Dublin to learn painting. He moved to London in 1887 and devoted himself to writing. His writings mostly dealt with Irish history, culture, and politics. His most famous works are The Wild Swans at Cool, Michael Robertes and the Dancer, The Winding Stair and Other Poems, and The Tower. He also wrote several plays like The Countess Kathleen, The King's Threshold, and Deirdre. He was one of the founders of the Abbey Theatre in Dublin. In 1923, he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. The poem for Anne Gregory appears, The Winding Stair and Other Poems. It narrates a conversation between Anne Gregory and a young man. Let's take a look at For Anne Gregory by W.B. Yeats. Conversations are great unless they are about depressing topics. But even then, they are quite informative. One always learns something. Yeats' poem is a conversation between a young man and a woman. The young man is sharing his opinion on how the world really works. He believes that the world usually places a lot of importance on outward beauty. He claims that young men are attracted to Anne Gregory because of her honey-colored hair. In other words, her looks. Such men love her only because of her beauty. They will never love her for who she really is. The young woman listens to his words and thinks of a solution. She feels all she has to do is dye her hair black or brown or carrot. Then men will love her for herself and not just for her yellow hair. The young man seems amused by this response. He tells her about an old man he met the previous night. This religious man had found a book which proved that only God could love a person for who she or he is. In other words, men will always look for beauty. Let's look at the literary.
Okay, now, as before going on to this, we all have done, like, this is just a basic intro of the poem. Okay, well, tell me what are the literary elements you can find out in the poem. What are literary, we have done literary devices, right? So just check what are literary devices that one of the very famous and common literary devices we all have learned. Ramparts, enjoyment, and ramparts can be compared to what it is compared to. Just now we have this, right? So we can, ramparts are metaphorically represented as kind of barriers or walls, right? Same thing when we have a diet.
Three elements of the poem. In the poem, the phrase honey-colored ramparts is an example of metaphor. Yeats, through the metaphor,
This is what I was talking about. You all have visited forts or anywhere. So you see the outside of the fort is generally guarded by walls or very high, or the height of the walls are generally very tall. Why? Just to keep away. It's kind of a defense mechanism. So the ears are also kind of a defense mechanism that is hiding her ears or giving her a support.
compares Anne Gregory's hair to the walls of a fort. The walls of a fort hide and protect the city, so also the hair hides the true self of Anne Gregory. The phrase, your yellow hair, is an example of alliteration. Yeats uses alliteration to enhance the musical quality of his poem. In the poem, the phrase yellow hair has been repeated many times.
Why it is
By
repeated?
repeating this phrase, the poet is
Trying to focus more on the external beauty rather than internal beauty. So what we generally do these days, that we focus mainly on the external thing rather than the internal content. You all believe that getting out of 80, 78, that means we know it, everything. But if anybody is getting 45, we seem to feel that the child is not quite adequate, or he or she needs to learn more. But a child cannot be assessed that way. So someone who is getting 60 can also be equally brilliant. Might be he or she has done some mistakes. So basically,
It's reinforcing the notion of external beauty. The word despair is also repeated in the poem. It reflects a young man's feelings for Anne Gregory. Cynic jockey is a figure of speech where a part refers to the whole. Here, yellow hair refers to Anne Gregory. But I can get a hair done.
Something new that you have learned, cynic jockey is something where you are referring to a single word, yellow hair. Yellow hair refers generally to the entire human being. Like if I tell you something called simply see, you'll recall something, right? So that refers to a part, to a whole. Okay?
And set such color there, brown or black or carrot, that young men in despair may love me for myself alone and not my yellow hair. In this stanza, the words there, despair and hair rhyme with each other. Let's assign B to these words. The words die, carrot and alone do not rhyme with each other. Let's assign A, C and D to these words. So the rhyme scheme of the stanza is A, B, C, B, D, B.
The alternate
For Anne Gregory paints an interesting picture of beauty. By doing so, it gives us some food for thought.
Okay. Now, from this poem, what do we generally? This is a very simple poem. See, as I told you before the beginning, if you read other American novels or of the romantic genre, the poets who belong to the romantic genre, there are different poets who wrote poems. If you see, romanticism is not restricted only, as I said, romance can be, you have to just find out the beauty in things. Okay. Now, in this poem, what does the poet actually try to signify? Basically, from this poem, can anyone tell me? Very simple thing that we can relate to our real life also practically.
We should focus in internal beauty.
Now, we should focus in internal beauty, and rather we should not always devote ourselves to external things. We should think on internal beauty. Person who we feel, so in sports also, that's why we have said say no to racism, right? So anything we should be devoid, we should not be, we cannot treat a person as black or white, poor or rich, thin or fat. Everyone is born equal. We should treat everyone equally, and we should respect each and everyone. Whether we should always, before judging on to someone or about someone, we should first get into their shoes. Then we have to see what it feels when we are standing at their point. Okay. So that is what, and we should always focus on internal things, and rather than focusing on external beauties. Okay, let's see if we have some questions related to it. What we can do? Question answer or quiz? Yes. At a count of, okay, we'll have row wise answer. First that row will answer, okay. A. Here choose from the given options two literary device used in the phrase. Two literary devices, cynic jockey and okay, what options do you choose? A and B. 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 Metaphor. Next. Never shall a young man thrown into despair by those great. Okay. How does Annie respond to this statement? Scroll down. Okay. Okay, someone who is very quiet, let's hear it from them. Shraddha, no need to stand up. You can get an answer. This is not. See. Okay, so says that I do something else. Okay. Okay. Next. Which phrase is an example of alliteration in the poem? Let's hear it from Sweet Priya. B. Okay. What quality of Annie Gregory is reflected in this paragraph? Rajanta. So let's try. It's not that you have to be correct all the time. Try. What kind of quality? What do you feel that from this paragraph? What kind of quality can be associated with Annie Gregory? Okay, idealism. Good. This kind of an idealistic that you all have watched very famous, we have a very famous TV show. Okay. Tarak Mehta ka Ulta Chashma. We like dunya ek ulta, like we should reverse our point of view and see everything. So she is idealistic that when men are kind of not getting attracted to her, she will change her point of view. Okay, quickly we go on. What does the phrase young man in despair mean? Quickly. Rajan? Okay, now okay, so let's recall or basically kind of have a reflection because we are almost out of time and going to in the class. So we'll do one thing, we'll have a recap. Okay, next day just come prepared with the poem so that we can have a reflective session. Before reflection, we'll see what are the things that we have done today. Okay. Now, if I see what are the things that we have learned today, one is that, tell me the points that we have learned today. We should focus on internal beauty and avoid external things. Second, we should be like as Bhattacharya said that we should be idealistic. Okay. Okay, we should not always focus on materialistic things. Things should not be focused on. Should not be focused on. I have very good handwriting, so you can. Okay, next. What else? Okay. Most important that this is a poem about conversation. Okay. Right? This is a poem about conversation. So any conversation can be fruitful if it is built in a very good manner. Like this conversation did not go into an argument. Anything that exceeds the limit of conversation goes into argument. But conversation is needed because we can vent out our emotions and get a solution. So we can, rather than keeping things, we can have a conversation, and we can in life also, whatever things you are having within yourself, rather than putting it inside you or keeping it enclosed within you, you can vent it out. Like we had a vent out session, if you all recall, that you all vented out like what kind of things you needed changes or things like that. So these things are fruitful when we have, rather than keeping it within yourself, you have to go and speak out. Speaking out will make you ease in emotions. You should not have things here that practical. You see, poets are not basically very boring, they are practical. So as you keep learning the poems, you will get to know that poems are generally not that very boring. Okay, so with this we'll end. You all just go home, recall. Next we'll again carry it home. Thank you, students.
Thank you.